Well, happy Wednesday. It is New Comic Book Day. And this is the first episode of what I'm hoping to do moving forward, and that is reviewing the books that I checked out this week and let you know my thoughts on them. So, a lot of great series came out this week, a lot of great books. I'm just going to go over the ones that I personally read and give you, kind of a read or pass review of them. I am going to do my best to avoid spoilers, especially since most of these are ongoing series, and if you haven't had a chance to read them yet, I don't want to spoil anything for you. So I'm going to start off with DC Comics. This week, what came out was Justice League issue number 67. I did give that one a read. I have been on this Brian Michael Bendis Justice League run since he took the title over, and I gotta say, it's kind of waning on me. Now, Bendis is, of course, a phenomenal writer, one of my favorites. He is a legend in the field for a reason, but this series, I don't know, I feel like he's kind of calling it in. One thing Bendis does a really good job of is giving each member of the Justice League a really unique voice, but the dialogue feels very forced. The story is just kind of happening, and I just don't really feel connected to it in any way. It's definitely, if you want to jump in issue 67, you should have no problem kind of picking up what's happening. They do a pretty good job at the beginning of each issue of getting a synopsis of what's happened so far in the arc. This is the fourth issue in the current arc, United Order, and it's okay. I'm probably going to give this arc one more issue or however many until it finishes. But yeah, my personal opinion is you can pass on this one. Up next, from what I read this week, was Batman 89, issue number 2, from Sam Hamm and Joe Quinones. Absolutely loving this title. Joe Quinones' art speaks for itself. The artwork in Batman 89 has been phenomenal. I mean, just it's as a legendary and as amazing as you would expect it. I will say the pacing is a little bit slow. Sam Hamm, I'm not familiar with any other comic books that he may have written before this one. I do believe he wrote the adaptation of the Batman 89 movie to comic book. But for the most part, the pacing in this one has been kind of slow. It actually reads a lot more like a movie than it does a comic book, which is interesting. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but for a 6-issue miniseries, I would expect it to go a little bit quicker. But definitely worth a read if you can find issue number 1, or just jump in at issue number 2. You really aren't missing out on too much as long as you're semi-familiar with the Michael Keaton Batman movie from the 80s. But yeah, it's been a great read. The artwork alone is worth picking up. Next up is Superman and the Authority by Grant Morrison. This book been phenomenal. Every issue I have been enjoying. The artwork by Travel Foreman is fantastic, as well as from Michael Janin, and then the color by Alex Sinclair. Everything about it is just visually incredible. The writing has not disappointed. Grant Morrison is in full force in this one. He is a great writer for he is a great writer for Superman, and he wrote, of course, Superman, All-Star Superman, one of the most beautiful Superman books, and he does not disappoint in this series either. This one is a little bit different. I would not recommend jumping in at issue 3. I would go back and read issues 1 and 2 first, but absolutely an incredible book, definitely worth checking out. Next up is Justice League: The Last Ride from Chip Cidarski. I gotta say, this is probably one of my favorite DC titles that I'm reading right now. It is incredible. Issue 4 was one of the best standalone or single issue comic books I have read in a long time. Issue number 5 was good too as well. He's doing a really great job of examining the relationships between especially Batman and Superman, as well as just between the members of the Justice League in general. This issue was definitely much more action-packed than some of the previous ones. We've kind of reached a climax with the League trying to protect Lobo and hold him until the United Planets are able to come get him. But, we had Mongol show up, we had a Brainiac Cyborg Superman show up. I mean, it's been really good. And this issue, all of that kind of came to a head and is setting up some really interesting stuff moving forward. And then the last title that I read from DC this week was Titans United. Now, this is, of course, the first issue. It is going to be a 7-issue miniseries with Titans United. Wasn't blown away by it. Wasn't super excited about it or anything. Nothing really stood out to me. The art was pretty par for the course, and the writing was okay. I'm curious to see what happens, but this one, if you're not a big Titans fan, you can definitely pass on it. If you are a fan of the Teen Titans, it's worth reading for that. I personally am a fan of the Titans, so I want to read it for that reason only. But it was okay. I mean, it's not a super amazing story. Red Hood's in it if you want some Red Hood, Donna Troy, Connor Kent, Beast Boy, Raven, Nightwing, all the characters you would expect. The artwork was, like I said, par for the course. The covers are really awesome. I got the B cover myself, which was an awesome Nightwing cover. But yeah, I mean, not super mind-blowing in any way, just kind of a, standard read, if you would. So that is it for the DC titles I read. Kind of a light week for me personally. Next, I'm going to talk about the Marvel titles that I gave a read. So an even lighter week for me for Marvel, I think, starting off with Fantastic Four Life Story number 4. Now, I am enjoying this series, but I also was a really big fan of Spider-Man Life Story. If you're not familiar with that premise, essentially, it's what if the Fantastic Four aged through time from their first appearance in the 1960s. This issue was set in the 90s. We kind of still have this looming threat of Galactus coming, and it's been fun kind of watching them go through some of the standard tropes of the Fantastic Four story. This series is a great introduction to the comic book version of the Fantastic Four if you're not familiar with them. They have made some changes, but nothing too major. And most of the changes that they made in terms of relationship between the characters do make sense for the way that they're narrating their story. Next up was Eternals Thanos Rises. Now, I'm going to say this book probably not best for new readers. It is very dense. It is very cosmic Marvel, and you gotta be kind of familiar with who the Eternals are and a little bit more familiar with the comic book origin of Thanos. I will say the artwork from Dustin Weaver was phenomenal. I mean, beautiful, mind-blowing. It was everything you would want from a really heavy cosmic story like this, but the artwork was second to none for sure. The writing was also great. I am currently reading the Eternal storyline by Kieran Gillen, and he did write this series, this standalone title as well. So it does tie in nicely and give some more depth to Thanos. I personally was not super familiar with Thanos' comic book origin. I do know it, but I've never personally read it. And this book gave it some depth and gave it some meaning and kind of reconnected Thanos to the Eternals in a really good way. But yeah, if you're reading Eternals, I definitely recommend checking this one out. If you're really familiar with the Eternals, this could also be a good read. Or just for the artwork alone, like I said, it was second to none. And then lastly, this week from Marvel, I read Web of Spider-Man issue number 5. Now, this Web of Spider-Man series was a lot of fun. Not super intense. It is a great series if you're not, reading any Spider-Man titles right now. What it is basically a team, the Worldwide Engineering Brigade, set up by Tony Stark of super genius teenagers to kind of help support the Avengers. But this was a great little issue, 5-issue miniseries. This issue number 5 is the last one. If you want to jump in and read it, you can. I do recommend reading the previous issues as there was a good amount of action and some development and stuff that happens earlier on. I am going to be doing a full review of this book, though, once the trade does come out, because it is worth a read, especially if you're looking for kind of a fun, lighthearted Spider-Man story that doesn't focus too much on Spider-Man. You actually get a good amount of Peter Parker in this one, as well as some other characters like Luna Girl, Harvey from Iron Man 3, actually. The kid from that movie does make his first appearance in the first issue of this one. But it was a good series. It was fun, not super intense. The artwork was really great. I did enjoy that quite a bit. And the last book I'm going to talk about is actually my pick of the week. And for my pick of the week, I am going with Primordial issue number 1 from Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino, and Dave Stewart. This book was just absolutely incredible. I was hooked from the first page. Lemire did not disappoint. The artwork was just second to none. I mean, this is an A+ creative team. If you're familiar with Lemire and Sorrentino, you really can't go wrong. So the premise of this book is around the early days of the space race. In the late 1950s, the USSR launched a dog into orbit by the name of Leica, which actually recently became rather popular on TikTok with a trend. Shortly after, the US responded by sending 2 monkeys named Abel and Baker. Now, historically, these animals never returned. All 3 of them died shortly after leaving the Earth's atmosphere, either through whatever different means. But in this story, when they died, both countries gave up the space race. Now, of course, in the real world, this was just the beginning of the space race, but in this, it was the end for whatever reason. And it's not really clear as to why at the beginning would the deaths of a couple animals, a couple test subjects, cause the end of the entire global space race. What it turns out is that they didn't die when they reached orbit. They were taken. And the fact that they were taken caused both countries to give up space exploration totally. Now, this first issue sets up just an incredible story that I am so excited to see how it plays out. But the artwork in this one was everything you could want. It was surreal, it was sci-fi, it was noir, it was everything you could want in artwork for a comic, and I am just so excited for the continuation of this series. This is definitely my pick of the week. You definitely need to give this a read. I don't know what else to say about it. It is going to be an incredible series, I can already tell. Lemire and Sorrentino do not disappoint. But yeah, you can get a copy of Primordial issue 1 at the link in my bio. And this is, like I said, this is the pick of the week. This is the book that I recommend everyone read. But that is it for this new comic book day review. Hopefully the other episodes I'll have more stuff to share with you. My books came a little bit late this week, so I didn't get a chance to get a head start on my reading. But yeah, if you want to shop this week's new releases, feel free to check the link down below in the description. You can order them directly from my website and help support the journey of GTX Comics. But thank you so much for watching. Be sure to drop a like, a comment, and hit that subscribe button for future episodes, and I will see you later.